Today I'm going to show you what's inside these drum brakes and how they work to stop your vehicle. Now nowadays drum brakes are only found on the rear of vehicles. Typically it's bolted to the hub of the vehicle, so it's also rotating with the wheel of the car. Now if I remove the drum here, you can see why they call it drum brakes. It's basically a giant drum with the internal surface here being the friction surface that these shoes will rub against when you apply the brakes to stop the vehicle. To get a clearer access, I'm going to remove this wheel hub. I'm going to unbolt these four 14mm bolts, and now I can remove the wheel hub assembly. Now there's a few main components that go into this drum brake assembly. We have the wheel cylinder up here, which is your hydraulic piston, and we have the brake shoes on the side here that push up against the drum. Then on the sides here we have these two guide pins, and that guides the shoes in and out against the drum. And then at the bottom here we have the parking brake cable that comes in here. We've got the parking brake lever, and then we've got a return spring over here. And then finally we have the adjuster for the drum. Now when you press the brakes, these lines here fill with hydraulic fluid, and that will fill up the wheel cylinder. The wheel cylinder will then expand and push these shoes out against the drum. Now the friction pad material here will graze up against the drum, slowing it down and turning its kinetic energy into heat. To demonstrate how the wheel cylinder works, I'm going to go pump on the brakes. Now this is the adjusting mechanism for the drum. It's basically a long screw that I can adjust the length of, and that will adjust the park position of the shoe relative to the drum to adjust for drum wear. At the bottom here we have the parking brake cable and its lever. Now when you pull up on the parking brake, this cable here will retract, and that'll pull this arm back, which in turn will push the shoe out against the drum, stopping the wheel. To demonstrate how the parking brake works, I'm going to pull up the parking brake handle. To get a better look, I'm going to disassemble these drum brakes. I'm going to first start by removing these guide pins. And now with the spring free from the bottom here, I can go ahead and remove the shoes. And then now I can pull back this spring here and release the parking brake cable from the shoe assembly. Now I'm going to remove the brake line, like that. So here I've got the drum brake assembly components laid out here. We've got this backing plate that has this tab that's riveted on for the parking brake to run through, as well as this tab here where the spring will connect these two shoes together at the bottom. Now this here is the brake drum itself. It's got a set distance for the diameter, and when it starts to wear down or forgets grooves, it will have to be replaced. Now one of the disadvantages of drum brakes is that it tends to keep all of the brake dust on the inside of the drum, as opposed to disc brakes where it can just fly off and stick to the wheel. And this here is the shoe assembly. We've got this friction material here. Now if you look closely, you'll notice that the leading edge of the pad material is actually thinner than the trailing edge at the bottom here, and that's because it's near the wheel cylinder, and that's just the nature of how it pivots. Now on this side we have the main shoe, and that's got this parking brake arm on it, and that's just held in by the C-clamp. Now when the cable gets tugged, this lever will move slightly, and the relative motion between the two will push the shoe out against the drum to lock it in place. Now this here is the adjusting screw. You can see as I screw it in, it gets smaller, and as I screw it out, it gets larger. Now when I have the adjuster installed into the shoe here, we have this little tab here that will lock this star wheel from retracting, so it can only go in the expanding direction, which is this way, but it won't be able to retract because it's locked into the tab here. Now the wheel cylinder is the heart of the drum brake. It's basically a piston that has these two ends here that move out and press against the shoe. On this side here we've got this boot. I'm going to remove that, and you can see that the piston also popped out at the same time. That's the piston, and we've got a spring there with some brake fluid. So basically as pressurized fluid comes into the housing here, it will expand against the spring force, pushing this piston and this piston outwards against the shoes, which will rub against the drum. Now while disc brakes are less complicated, drum brakes are still cheaper and easier to make. That's why you'll see them on the back of economy cars. Now the main disadvantage of drum brakes is the lack of stopping power compared to disc brakes. And that's pretty much all the components that go into making your drum brake work on your car.